My father shouted, "Get out of my house." I was kicked out at 14, right in the middle of a brutal snowstorm because of a lie that changed everything forever. My stepmother looked at me with cold eyes and said, "I don't want a sick daughter ruining my son's future." I walked away without a word. 2 hours later, one phone call turned their world upside down. I'm Fallon Knight. I'm 27 now, living in a cozy apartment in Minneapolis. Snow is falling outside my window again, just like it did that night 12 years ago. On my kitchen table sits an envelope, plain paper, shaky handwriting, postmarked from a nursing home. After 12 years of complete silence, my father has reached out. The letter is short, I don't have much time left. If you're willing, I'd like to see you one last time. If this story is already hooking you the way it still hooks me, please subscribe right now and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one, and it means the world. Thank you for joining me on this. That envelope took me straight back to the night it all fell apart. I didn't dare turn back. That January evening is etched in my mind forever. I had just gotten home from school later than usual because I'd stayed to work on a group presentation with classmates. The rural house near Duluth seemed normal as I approached porch light on curtains drawn against the early dark. But the second I walked through the front door, the atmosphere changed everything. It was too quiet, the kind of silence that presses in and makes your heart beat faster. No dinner smells from the kitchen, no noise from the living room. Just this thick tension that I could feel before I even saw them. My father stood in the middle of the living room, face flushed with anger, one hand holding a bundle of cash and the other clutching several small prescription pill bottles. My stepmother Olivia was framed in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed tightly, her expression hard and distant. My brother Riley, only 12, still in middle school, was standing nearby, looking genuinely confused and worried, like he'd stumbled upon something he wished he hadn't. I slipped off my backpack and set it down gently, trying to figure out what was happening. "Is everything okay?" My father didn't let me finish. He thrust the cash and bottles forward, voice rising as he accused me of stealing from his wallet for months. Small amounts adding up. And Riley had gone into my room earlier looking for a charger or something harmless and found this hidden away cash in my dresser, those pill bottles shoved in my closet. My stomach sank. That's not possible. I didn't take any money. And those bottles, I've never seen them before in my life. Riley glanced at me, his face full of concern, voice soft and hesitant. "I didn't want to tell on you. I thought maybe you were having a tough time, but it's getting serious." Olivia spoke then, her words sharp and final. "We don't want a sick daughter dragging down this family or ruining Riley's future." My father's anger exploded at that. He had always leaned toward believing whatever kept things smooth for the youngest. I tried to break through, voice shaking. "Dad, please. Someone else put that stuff there. You have to see it's not me." He shook his head, eyes narrowed. "You've been lying to us, stealing, hiding pills. We're done with it." Olivia remained still, adding calmly, "We've already decided. This isn't up for discussion." Riley stayed quiet, just watching with that troubled look. My father grabbed my arm, then pulling me back toward the door. I resisted, pleading for him to stop, to give me a chance to explain, but he wouldn't listen. He flung the door open. The cold rushed in like a slap wind, roaring snow blowing sideways under the porch light. "Get out of my house." He pushed me out. I caught the railing to steady myself, shock freezing me in place. The door slammed. The lock clicked. I stood on the porch for minutes that felt like hours, staring at the closed door, waiting for it to swing open again. For my father to realize the mistake. For Riley to come running out with an apology. For anyone to call me back. But the house remained silent, lights on, but no movement inside. My coat was hanging in the entryway. My phone sat charging in my room. Everything warm and useful was locked away. All I had was my school sweater, jeans, sneakers already damp from the walk home, and my backpack loaded with books, folders, and a forgotten lunch container. Snow piled up quickly on the railing. I couldn't stay there, they'd made that clear. The only safe place I could think of was Grandma Helen's house in Superior, 8 miles away across the bridge. The fear of going back, of facing that anger again, was stronger than the fear of the cold. I stepped off the porch, sinking into the drifts, and started walking down the driveway into the storm. I had no coat, no phone, no money. Just my backpack, and the faint hope that Grandma Helen would open her door when I got there. The wind slammed into me the moment I left the driveway, snow whipping sideways and cutting visibility to almost nothing. My thin sweater was useless. The cold pierced straight through, turning my skin prickly within minutes. Sneakers sank deep with every step, snow packing in around my ankles and soaking through instantly. I hugged my arms to my chest, backpack heavy on my shoulders, and kept my head down against the gusts. The fear of what waited if I turned around another locked door, more anger, felt more dangerous than the storm itself. So I pushed on, heading for the road that led to the bridge and eventually Grandma Helen's house in Superior. The wind hit harder once I left the protection of the trees around the neighborhood. Snow drove into my face, stinging my cheeks and forcing me to squint. My sweater offered no real barrier. The cold sliced through it, chilling my skin in seconds. Sneakers filled with snow at every step, socks turning wet and heavy. I pulled my arms tight across my chest, backpack digging into my shoulders as I leaned into the gusts. The bridge appeared after a while, its outline hazy through the blowing flakes. Crossing it meant committing fully. There'd be no quick way back if I changed my mind. I gripped the icy railing with numb fingers and started across the structure, swaying slightly in the gale. Each mile blurred into the next. The cold crept deeper, stealing feeling from my hands and feet first. My legs grew sluggish, each lift taking real effort. Breathing hurt, lungs burning with every inhale of frozen air. Thoughts scattered, random flashes of school that day, mixing with doubts about the distance left. Shivering became non-stop, body shaking in waves I couldn't control. I focused on small goals, reached the next light pole, then the one after. The world shrank to the white ground ahead and the ache in my lungs. Resting seemed tempting, just a brief stop to catch my breath. I fixed on a distant reflector post, thinking I'd pause there for a moment, but my body decided otherwise. Vision tunneled, legs buckled. The snow rose to meet me, soft but shockingly cold against my face. Darkness swallowed everything after that. I surfaced slowly under bright hospital lights, the sharp tang of antiseptic in the air. Warming blankets layered over me, monitors beeping steady rhythms, an IV line taped to my arm delivering fluids. My limbs felt leaden, disconnected. A woman occupied the bedside chair, silver hair pulled back neatly, glasses perched low on her nose, a paperback closed in her lap. She looked up as I stirred, expression calm but alert. She introduced herself as Shirley Lane, someone who'd lived a few miles down the rural road years ago. She'd been heading home late from a volunteer meeting when her headlights swept across my collapsed form near the roadside. She'd braked hard, jumped out with an emergency blanket from her trunk left over from her old job, and wrapped me while dialing 911. She'd ridden along in the ambulance and stayed at the hospital, making sure I pulled through. The medical team had raised my core temperature, carefully countering the hypothermia before it advanced further. Time outside had been close, she noted quietly. Minutes mattered in a storm that severe. Once coherent enough, the words spilled out. I recounted arriving home, to the sudden confrontation, the strange cash and pill bottles appearing in my room. My father's immediate belief in the worst, the refusal to hear any defense, being forced out into the night with nothing but school clothes and a backpack. I explained the terror that drove me to walk rather than knock again, the growing confusion as the cold took hold, the fading hope of reaching safety. Shirley absorbed it all without a single interruption, her focus unwavering as the account unfolded. When I trailed off, throat dry and emotions spent, she paused briefly. Then she leaned forward and covered my hand with hers. I spent 30 years in Child Protective Services. This doesn't add up, and I'm not going to let it slide. They showed up looking out of place in the sterile hospital corridor, my father in his work jacket still dusted with snow from the drive, Olivia beside him in her coat expression tight and controlled. A nurse directed them to my room where Shirley was still sitting by the bed keeping watch. The door opened and they stepped in, my father leading. He stopped short when he saw the uniformed officer standing near the window and the hospital social worker seated with a notepad. Shirley remained in her chair, calm but alert. My father cleared his throat. "We got the call. What exactly happened?" The officer explained briefly. A minor found unconscious on a public road in dangerous weather conditions. No coat, no phone signs of exposure. Standard protocol required notification of parents and involvement of Child Protective Services, especially when the circumstances raised questions about how a 14-year-old ended up alone in a storm. Olivia glanced at me, then away quickly. My father shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable under the scrutiny. Shirley spoke up, then voice steady. She identified herself as the person who discovered me and stayed through the initial treatment. She confirmed the condition I'd been in: severe hypothermia risk, no protective gear, walking miles from home. The social worker asked direct questions: why I had been outside without proper clothing, whether there had been a family dispute, if anyone had checked on me after I left the house. My father started to answer, mentioning the argument and the accusations of theft and pills, but the officer interrupted politely, suggesting details be saved for the formal report. They didn't stay long. The staff made it clear visitation was limited pending review, and my father was asked to step out while the social worker spoke with me privately. Olivia followed him without a word. Morning brought new faces. A woman in professional attire entered with the nurse Cynthia Reyes, the assigned Child Protective Services investigator. She introduced herself, sat down, and began asking careful questions about the events leading up to the night before, taking notes, as I recounted what I could. Word had reached Grandma Helen by then. She arrived mid-morning, driving over from Superior the moment she heard. She strode into the room like a force, small but commanding, gray hair tied back, eyes sharp behind her glasses. She went straight to the bed, taking my hand, then turned to the staff and Cynthia. "This is my granddaughter. What's being done here?" Cynthia explained the situation: emergency assessment due to endangerment concerns, temporary safety plan needed immediately. Grandma Helen didn't hesitate. She demanded an emergency custody hearing right there if necessary, stating clearly that I would not be returning to an environment where I'd been put at such risk. My father was called back in for part of the discussion. He tried to explain his side, the discovered evidence, his belief in the accusations, but Cynthia remained neutral, focusing on the facts of my condition and the lack of immediate search or concern. The social worker and Cynthia consulted briefly with hospital administration. Given the severity, a minor expelled into life-threatening weather without verification of claims, temporary guardianship was granted on the spot to Grandma Helen pending full investigation. My father was informed he could not take me home and was asked to leave the room again. He hesitated at the door, looking like he wanted to say something, but turned and walked out. By afternoon, discharge papers were ready. Grandma Helen helped me into warm clothes she'd brought from home, bundled me into her car, and drove us back across the bridge to Superior. I left the hospital with her, the weight of the night starting to lift just a little. 2 weeks later, Cynthia Reyes called Grandma Helen one afternoon with the first solid lead. Late April, the day of the family court hearing, finally arrived. Cynthia Reyes worked methodically from the start. She requested full bank statements tied to the cash my father claimed I stole. The amount matched one specific withdrawal on the afternoon of that January day. Security footage from the ATM was blurry from snow on the lens, but frame-by-frame enhancement showed a figure in a familiar jacket, Riley's distinctive high school varsity one, the same he wore constantly that winter. Cynthia verified my whereabouts that hour through school records. Electronic sign-in logs placed me in class, multiple teachers recalling me participating in discussions. The ATM location was too far for me to reach and return unnoticed. The pill bottles led next. Labels traced to a local pharmacy dispensing anxiety medication. The prescription holder was Ava Brooks Riley's girlfriend, several years older, someone he'd been dating quietly for months. Ava had filed a police report claiming the bottles were stolen from her vehicle, but the report came days after the incident timing that didn't align. Cynthia examined Ava's background and uncovered minor financial discrepancies, overdraft fees, disputed charges. Then the break came. Ava was arrested on a separate local fraud case involving fake merchandise sales online. Facing charges with potential jail time, she opted for cooperation in exchange for consideration. Her statement detailed the scheme. Riley had approached her stressed about money, mentioning family trust funds and how access could solve problems. He'd asked for empty prescription bottles to stage evidence of a problem. Ava provided them, thinking it was just to scare me into behavior changes. But under questioning, she revealed overhearing Riley and Olivia discussing the plan, how portraying me as unstable would position a reliable family member to manage my share of the inheritance until I recovered. Bank analysis revealed more. Over almost 2 years, modest transfers had drained my father's accounts, amounts small enough to blend with household expenses routed to Riley's personal account or ones linked to Ava. Signatures on transferred checks were close imitations of my father's, but forensic review spotted inconsistencies in pen pressure and stroke. Cynthia subpoenaed phone records, subtly noting frequent late-night calls between Riley and Ava in the weeks leading up. Neighbor statements placed Riley's car at the house during school hours on the day the cash was withdrawn. The pattern emerged clearly. This wasn't a spontaneous reaction to discovered misbehavior. It was layered, planned over time, with Olivia's subtle guidance to safeguard what she viewed as Riley's rightful opportunities. Grandma Helen received regular updates during Cynthia's visits to the house. She listened intently as files thickened with printouts, enhanced stills, prescription histories, transfer logs, Ava's formal confession. One afternoon, Cynthia spread the complete dossier on the kitchen table. "This case almost slipped through the cracks," she said, meeting my eyes and Grandma Helen's, "but now we have everything." 12 years went by, and I had built a life I never thought possible. The courtroom was small and plain, just rows of wooden benches and a raised judge's platform. Grandma Helen sat beside me in the front row, her hand steady on mine. Our lawyer, George Riley, had prepared everything meticulously. Across the aisle, my father sat alone. Olivia was there too, but she kept her distance from him. Riley, only 12, was with a guardian ad litem appointed for minors. The judge entered, a woman with sharp eyes and no patience for theatrics. Proceedings began with George presenting the evidence in order. First, the ATM footage, enhanced stills showing Riley at the machine during my school hours. Then school records proving my presence miles away. Pharmacy logs linking the bottles to Ava Brooks. Bank statements highlighting the pattern of small transfers over years. Ava's signed statement was read aloud, detailing how Riley had asked for the bottles and discussed the plan openly enough that Olivia overheard parts of it. When Olivia was called to the stand, she started with denials, claiming she knew nothing. But George pressed calmly with specific dates and overheard conversations from Ava's account. Olivia's voice wavered. Under oath, she admitted hearing Riley mention Ava in connection with fixing the problem of my share of the trust fund, but insisted she thought it was just talk. My father took the stand next. He looked worn, avoiding my eyes. George asked why he hadn't verified any claims before acting. My father mumbled about trusting Riley completely, about wanting family peace, about believing the younger child needed protection more. He acknowledged favoring Riley's version without question. Riley's turn came with his guardian present. At 12, he wasn't prosecuted as an adult. The focus remained on family court outcomes. He sat quietly, face pale, as the evidence piled up. No denial came from him. The judge listened to all of it, reviewing documents as they were submitted. When closing statements ended, she leaned forward. "This was not a mistake," she said firmly. "This was orchestration, calculated steps to discredit a child and endanger her life for financial gain." The ruling followed swiftly. For Riley, suspended sentence given his age, 5 years supervised probation, mandatory counseling, full restitution of diverted funds, a permanent no-contact order with me if violated, immediate consequences. My father lost all guardianship rights permanently. He was ordered to contribute to my support and therapy costs until adulthood. Grandma Helen received full permanent custody, no restrictions. As the gavel fell, the room felt still. My father stared at the table. Olivia gathered her things quickly. Riley was let out by his guardian. Grandma Helen squeezed my hand. We stood and walked out together. I didn't glance back once. That day, I let go completely. I'm 27 now, living in a bright apartment in Minneapolis with a view of the city lights that feel worlds away from that rural darkness. I worked my way up to project manager at a software company, starting from entry-level positions and earning every promotion through late nights and determination. The job pays well, offers stability, and surrounds me with colleagues who value what I bring to the table. Xander is part of that life too, my fiancé, steady and kind in ways I never knew growing up. We met at a work conference a few years back. He was presenting on team dynamics, and I asked a question that turned into coffee, then dinner, then everything else. He listens without pushing, supports without demanding, and makes ordinary days feel safe. Grandma Helen is still going strong in Superior, sharp as ever, gardening in summer and baking through winter. We talk often, visit when we can. She's the family I chose, the one who showed up when no one else did. The envelope arrived forwarded from her address, one I hadn't used in years. Plain, white, cheap paper, handwriting shaky but recognizable. I knew who it was from before opening it. I sat at the kitchen table and read slowly. My father wrote from a nursing home explaining health issues that left him little time. He apologized for believing the lies, for choosing ease over truth, for the night he locked the door. He said he thought of me every day, regretted the choices that cost him his daughter. I read it once, then again. No anger rose, just a quiet acceptance that some things can't be undone with words on paper. I didn't finish the second page. I folded the letter back, placed it in the return envelope unsealed, and mailed it back the next day. No note from me, no response needed. I blocked the nursing home number, any old contacts that might relay messages. Clean break, no exceptions. Xander came home that evening, noticed the quiet in me, and asked gently if I wanted to talk. I told him about the letter, the contents, my decision. He nodded, pulling me close. I looked at him and said softly, "I survived without them. I don't need their regret to move forward. Real family isn't blood. It's the people who protect you without condition, who show up when it's hard, who believe you when it matters most." Grandma Helen taught me that. Xander lives it every day. The past has its place, but it doesn't own my future anymore.